Is the virtual wholesaling model obsolete? I invented virtual wholesaling back in 2004 or 5, and recently new developments have made me consider the fact that that old model of virtual wholesaling is in fact outdated. And this thought process came about because of a client who did a deal in a market very far away where the population size was very, very small. And he did this deal without ever having to speak with the seller at all. No phone conversation at all. I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened. And I want to share with you my new model of virtual wholesaling. So let's not waste any more time and let's get right down to it. Is the virtual wholesaling model obsolete? That is the question that I want to answer here for you today. And this whole idea of a video came about because of this comment that I got in one of my groups. And let's read through it together. This is from a client of mine. Got my first check today for my first virtual deal. He spent $900 in ads with 75 leads, and it was a $10,000 assignment fee. And now here's the most interesting part. A couple things that are interesting. Number one is he said, I did the whole process over text messaging. Did not get on the phone even once. So I thought that was interesting. Secondly, he was targeting nationwide. So he didn't pick any one particular market. And the deal that he got was in Ohio. Now I'd asked him this question after I saw the post. I said, hey, what made it possible for you to do the entire thing without you getting on the phone? To which he answered, the owner was a hot lead. She was ready to go. I was doubtful at first because it was in an area around 800 residents. Think about that. Think about that population size. She kept texting me a couple of days until I gave in and finally gave it a try. Then I asked him, okay, so just to confirm, I wanted to confirm with him, you were targeting nationwide and got the deal in Ohio and in a small town. And I assume that you've never done anything in Ohio either. To which he responded, no, never done anything in Ohio. And he was targeting nationwide and he just happened to land there. And that's what I want to talk to you here about today. Because the big picture of this message here that I got was that the entire transaction was done via text messaging. The town was 800 in population size, so very, very small. The client had never been to that state or area, no knowledge whatsoever, and it was a completely virtual transaction. Now, we've talked about virtual wholesaling. You know what virtual wholesaling is, and if you don't, I'll cover that in just a second. But these other parts are probably things that maybe you haven't heard about before. So was he just lucky that he did that? The answer is no, and I'm not going to get into this, but I got a lot of clients that are doing the same thing. Here's a gentleman that did a deal in a population size of 19,000 people. Here's another one where the population size was 1960 and 933. And I've got a lot of case studies and testimonials that of students that are doing exactly this. So before we begin, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So this here is only going to take a second for those of you that may already know this, but what we're covering here in this video is wholesaling. Now, and specifically virtual wholesaling, but just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, what is wholesaling? So wholesaling is where we're going and finding a property owner that is desiring, needs to sell their property. They need to sell it quickly. So let's say in this example, we have a house that's worth $150. We go ahead and we put that on the contract for $75,000 because it needs repairs. There's a particular situation going on that they're more predisposed to give us the property at a discount. We then go out and find a real estate investor who's interested in buying properties for rental properties, for maybe to buy, fix, and sell. And then we mark up our deal, they take it over, and then within a couple weeks, we get paid what's called an assignment fee. So we get paid for being the middleman. We get paid for being a property finder. And when you do this type of transaction, there's never any risk to you, unlike conventional real estate. So you never have to place a deposit, never have to sign for a loan, never close and took ownership of the property. You never have to worry about making payments. And it's absolutely nothing like you see on those shows on TV where they do all that kind of stuff. That's not what we're doing. And the best thing about wholesaling is that the wholesaling is really the gateway to the world of real estate investing. So if later on you wanted to go out and you wanted to buy a rental property, you wanted to buy a property and fix it up because you really feel like doing that. You feel like maybe you'd like to get involved with that. You can do all those things. But in the beginning, when you start with wholesaling, that is the best way to get started for you to start making money and be able to get introduced to the business. Now, what is virtual wholesaling is where you're doing this wholesaling, but you're doing it from anywhere. I've done it while I've been on vacation. That's a picture of me and my family when we went to Italy. I've done it. I work from home. I do it in my pool. It doesn't matter where you do it because now you no longer have to go and meet with property owners and see properties or any of that conventional stuff. So let's talk about the big problem with virtual wholesaling right now. What most real estate investors do is when they're thinking about doing virtual wholesaling is that they're going to decide if they're going to be local or long distance with wholesaling. So whether or not, if I'm in Miami, am I going to do virtual wholesaling in Miami or virtual wholesaling in another area? Now, you might say, well, gee, you're not doing virtual wholesaling if you're doing it in your local area. You can't, because let's say that I have been going and meeting with property owners, going out and physically inspecting properties. Well, I can decide that I want to do everything virtually. So I don't want to leave my house anymore. And so therefore, I'm still going to do it in my local market. I'm just going to do it in a different way. Or I can decide, you know what, I don't want to do it in Miami, I want to do it in Tampa. So that's virtual. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to pick a market. And then what I'm going to do is, let's say, for example, that I did want to do Tampa. And I'm just saying that for illustrative purposes, not saying that you should go to Tampa. So then I'm going to attempt to implement lead generation strategies in that market to try to find deals. And so then now the problem with this approach, when you're picking one market, is that, your research on the market is going to be very minimal and really not conclusive, because you really don't know what you're doing when it comes to research. You're going to look at a lot of data, and in the end, you're going to make a decision, and you're going to be forced to implement marketing that has heavy competition, because you're focusing on one market, and you're going to be focusing on most likely a lot of niche lists and a lot of smaller lists, like a tax delinquent list, a code violation list, which has a lot of traffic. So you're going to be butting heads with a lot of other real estate investors, and you're going to spend a lot of time and money before you know if it's the right choice. And again, it's really hard to pick a market with any sort of, to validate a market, because, the other day I said, well, let me decide on, let me go and try to do the research, right? And, come up with a bunch of graphs and different things. And in the end, it's just going to be almost like throwing a dart on a dartboard, because I really don't know. And that's the same thing you probably experience. So then now, if I decided to go into Tampa, as an example, I might consider doing direct mail. I might consider doing cold calling, text blasting, RVMs. If I have someone there that I could tap into, they might be doing driving for dollars. And all these techniques work. But I'm, again, picking one market and now making a commitment in terms of finances and money in order to see if I can get deals. And so the challenge with this is that I'm going to invest a lot of money. For example, if I'm going to be doing direct mail, I got to send out at least 2,000 or 3,000 postcards, maybe more, before I can know for a fact if it's going to be viable or not for me to attempt to do deals in this market. So there's a lot of risk, and I got to make a good decision. By the way, if you like this content, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell so you can be notified when the next video comes out. Now, my new methodology is national wholesaling, and this is what my students are having great success with. And so national wholesaling, or we can call it nationwide wholesaling, you don't pick one market. What you do is you're going to select the best marketing channel, and then the lead source, and then you're going to allow that to dictate where you are going to do deals in. And so the benefit to this is that it's easier to scale because you're only working one channel. So you're only working with one thing that you need to learn. So as an example, if you're going to be going into a market like Tampa and I'm going to be implementing direct mail and cold calling and text blasting and all that other stuff, RVM stands for ringless voicemail, then I've got a lot of things to learn and to manage and to get right, versus with this approach, I'm going to select only one marketing method, only one. And I'll tell you what that is in a second. You may already be thinking that you know what that is. And then now you're just working that one marketing channel. And there's less risk with this approach because you're not picking the market. I'm not picking a market. I am picking one marketing channel and then allowing that marketing channel to dictate where the leads are coming from. So what do I mean by that? So when, again, using my example, I'm in Miami, I'm in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So I could decide to target Broward, or I could decide to target Tampa. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the entire state of Florida. Or maybe I might group a few counties together. You could do that. But let's say if I was going to give you advice, I'd say you're going to go ahead and target the entire state of Florida. If you're brand new and you haven't done a deal before, that's what I recommend. Now, if you're intermediate, then you can go ahead and select 2 to 3 states and group them together. Maybe you know someone in Texas as well as Florida and North Carolina, and so you might group those states together. I don't recommend that if you've never done a deal before, because now you have to deal with knowing the idiosyncrasies and the different ways of doing deals in these other different states. And so it's easier to just stick with one state that you know and learn how to operate in that particular state before you go on to targeting multiple states. And then I have some students that are targeting the entire country. And by targeting the entire country, I don't mean every single state, but generally speaking, the top 15 to 20 populous states. Now, I do recommend that if you're using this approach, that you stay away from certain states because, especially if you're starting out brand new. One example would be a lot of people struggle with California. Prices are high. Sellers are more sophisticated. The markets themselves are very difficult to comp because, you know, if you're in San Diego and you're comping a property, but you go 3 blocks down the road and that whole neighborhood changes and now the prices are completely different. So it helps if you have intimate knowledge of, say, when you're in California, of that particular geographic region. And so I find it to be a more difficult market to work with. Another example would be New York. In New York, you have to deal with attorneys and and most of the time they want large deposits, and it's a difficult state to work in. So when I say New York, I mean Queens County, Bronx, etc. So I would stay away from there as well. Now, a question that comes up many times is, Cris, if you're targeting an entire state, aren't you going to get leads in a bunch of different areas and places that you're not familiar with, that you have absolutely no clue about? And the answer is yes. But however, that doesn't mean that we can't still do deals. The example that I showed you before was somebody in my group that did a deal with a population size of 20,000 here, and he did these other 2 deals, 2,000 population size, 933, and the previous example, the first example I showed you, was the same size. Here is a comment. I'll read you through the comment. It says, I've been talking to some of you about how I do it virtually across the USA. One of my biggest fears was getting houses in small towns. Honestly, these were 2 of the easiest ones to find buyers. The deals were easier to negotiate. So what I'm saying is this: don't be afraid of small towns and tiny populations. There's always an investor somewhere looking for a deal. And I always say that price is the great equalizer, because if you get the deal at the right price, then you're not going to have a problem in selling that. Now, there's a catch to this methodology, right? And the catch is that it really doesn't work well with conventional real estate marketing, because if you're doing direct mail, you're doing cold calling, SMS, RVMs. Again, SMS means where you get a group, a big list of people, you get the phone numbers, and then you have the software that you tap into, and you're able to send these people text messages, and you send thousands of messages a day. And also ringless voicemail is kind of the same thing, but you're sending it through a voicemail. I'm not in any way, I'm being neutral about these. I'm not recommending these. I don't do them. There's some peculiarities associated with each of these that you have to be aware of from a legal standpoint. I'm not going to get into that in this video. But bottom line is that if we were to pick one of these and we were to pick direct mail, it would not be cost effective for you to mail the entire state of Florida. You'd go broke before you find a deal. You wouldn't have the money to be able to cover all the names and the phone numbers and the addresses that are in the entire state. There's over 12 million people. And so that's the catch. It's very difficult to do. So the only method that works to generate these type of leads that we're looking for is through Facebook marketing and using Facebook to go out and find us the property owners that are interested in selling in a very, very large area. Now, the way that Facebook works, and at the end of this video, I'll share with you another video that I have that will help you go a little bit deeper into Facebook. If you haven't done Facebook before, then I have a series of videos and training here on this channel that you can listen to that'll walk you through step by step my entire process for Facebook. But to give you the big picture is that we go and create simple image ads. Facebook are going to show these ads to our ideal type of property owner. And then the property owners raise their hands and then fill out a form right there on Facebook asking for an offer. And then we get an email notifying us of the inquiry. And then we get back to these individuals and to have a conversation with them. Now, an example campaign, this is an example campaign that I ran in the state of Florida, and where I generated, is an example, 50 leads at $10.80 a lead. So I spent $540 to generate 50 leads. I'll tell you this, and I'm going to get into the different lead costs in just a second. When you're, any sort of lead generation campaign that you may do, whether it be direct mail, pay-per-click advertising, the cost for those leads is going to be significantly higher than what I'm showing you here on the screen. And, again, when you're doing this approach and you're going out into a wide market, again, we don't pick one market. We pick, for example, an example I gave you, this entire state of Florida. And we're going to go ahead and make that decision based on our experience level, as I mentioned before. And then when the leads come in, then we will work the leads as they come in. And so we don't make a decision about a town that we're going to be in or not. We're just going to do the deals as they come in. Now, and again, I covered this before. So and I wanted to just put this slide back up here. If you're going to be a beginner, you select one entire state. If you are an intermediate, you select 2 to 3 states. And if you're an advanced, meaning you've already done deals, etc., you can select the entire country. Now, the gentleman that I showed you before, right at the beginning of this video, he was just starting out, and so he did the entire country. So if you wanted to, you can do that as well. It's really up to you. And again, the benefits of wide targeting when it comes to Facebook is that the bigger the audience, the less expensive the leads are going to be from Facebook. You're not forcing a fight for leads in any given market. So like most investors, they're forcing a market. They are going after, for example, a tax delinquent list where there are hundreds of investors going after the same list and they're butting heads. And the other part of it is that when you're doing this sort of wide targeting, is that you're tapping into pockets of sellers that nobody else is targeting. You're getting inventory in a lot of places that most investors are not really going after. Now, you may be wondering, so what is the cost to generate a lead with this approach? This approach allows us to generate leads at a really affordable rate. If we're advertising nationally, meaning that we're at least targeting 5 or 6 states, maybe 10 to 15 states, we're getting leads anywhere between $5 to $10 per lead. If we're doing it statewide, then we are getting leads for somewhere between $10 to $20 per lead. And if we really wanted to do the county, then we would be paying somewhere between $20 to $35 per lead. Now, the types of leads you're going to get are going to be small little towns. I kid and I say, sometimes we get these leads in this small little town, little house in the middle of nowhere, where if I went to that town and they found me and they killed me, you would never find me. Typically, those we might skip. However, we will get towns that are still larger in population, but relatively small. Maybe markets that you may not have considered because if you're, say, cold calling, you may run out of phone numbers to call relatively quickly in that area. But if you get a deal or two there, it's a viable market. So you're going to get medium populations, large metro. And so a large metro area here in the state of Florida would be if I get leads in Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, Jacksonville, Florida, Orlando. But I will get leads in other areas that I may not have considered, like Melbourne, Florida, Titusville. And so you're also then later on, let's say, for example, you get a deal in Melbourne, Florida. You never thought about Melbourne, Florida, but you got a deal. You talk to a few buyers. They're still interested in more deals. So now at that point you might decide and say, you know what, maybe I might do a small direct mail campaign because it seems like that market has life and there's not that much competition, not many people poking in there. And so now that becomes now an easier way to then implement those other conventional marketing strategies in order to find deals. And Again, you're also, when you're approaching it in this way, the way that I'm describing, is you're also dealing with less competition from other real estate investors, and that's key. So you might be thinking, wow, this sounds really interesting. How does this whole Facebook thing work? Well, I've got a video, should show up somewhere on the screen, that will teach you step by step as part of a series on how to run Facebook ads for motivated sellers for your real estate investing business. I'm the #1 guy teaching this, and it's a 4-part series that people have watched this series and have been able to do a deal just by watching this series. They never had to even buy any of my products. In addition to that, I'll also put that link in the description. And if you are interested in getting help from me in order to implement this strategy, there's also a link there as well. You can get more information. So go ahead and click on that video right now.